Queen Meve, the White Queen, is one of the most fascinating characters in the Witcher universe. From her childhood to the time she fought alongside Geralt in one of the bloodiest battles, her journey is full of epic stories. Stories of the queen who never surrendered and kept fighting until either she defeated her enemies or died trying. This is the story of Queen Meve. Let's start from her childhood. Meve was born into the Lyrian branch of House Raven, an old noble family whose roots traced back to Sintra. That made her and Queen Calansi, Ciri's grandmother, distant cousins. Meve grew up at the palace of Lyria. From a very young age, she was interested in battles and the military, reading about great generals and wars, and practicing with a sword rather than committing to the duties expected from a girl born into royalty, which were intended to make her a supposed good wife to be married off to a king or a prince. This interest in combat plays a huge role in shaping her character to eventually become the queen that she was. Still a very young girl, Meve meets her cousin Calansi long before either of them wore a crown. The two instantly hit it off, sharing the same stubborn, headstrong personality. Their fondness for each other and close friendship soon sparked rumors about the two having incest. Nowhere in the books it is stated that the two actually had a sexual relationship, making it highly likely that it was just a rumor spread by malicious intentions to tarnish their reputations. Although the rumors made it hard for them to get married, especially for Calansi, both were married off eventually. If you'd like to see a full video on Queen Calansi like this one, let me know in the comments. Let's move to the second part, her marriage. At the age of 16, a decision was made to marry her off. But there was a problem. Aside from rumors, Meve was usually covered in bruises, result of her practicing with sword. Many nobles lost interest the moment they saw post-practice bruises on her, until one finally fell in love with the princess, King Reginald of Rivia. Marriages, especially in monarchy, weren't romantic ones. They were for reasons of state. Beside that, romance, as you can imagine, wasn't exactly Meve's strength either. She remained distant and cold towards her new husband, showing little to no interest in her marriage. King Reginald, on the other hand, really liked her, so he tried to win her heart by getting her expensive gifts, like Ophiri tapestries, sapphire necklaces, and a Koviri lute, all of which Meve just threw away. Despite that, King Reginald didn't give up. He just tried harder and finally came up with the right gift. A gift that would finally win her heart. A full body plate armor painted in gold. This gift not only suited Meve's personality, but also meant that her husband finally understood her. Their marriage resulted in two sons, Willem and Ansis. Willem is present in the Thronebreaker game, a card game CDPR made with Queen Meve as the protagonist, and Ansis plays a small role in the Blood and Wine expansion. King Reginald was a kind character, but he really wasn't the brightest. He was actually pretty dumb, and according to Meve, her sons took after their father. He also had multiple affairs, but Meve didn't really mind that. As Queen of Lyria and Rivia, Meve took her responsibilities far more seriously than her husband ever had. Wearing the very armor Reginald had given her, she regularly traveled across her kingdom to see firsthand how her people lived. She listened to their concerns, learned about their struggles, and whenever she could, worked to solve them. As you can imagine, this raised her popularity among her people. It is said that whenever Meve departed the city, she was met with cheering crowds and rose petals at her feet. These were the first signs of the ruler Meve would become: practical, attentive, and never content to govern from behind palace walls. She earned the loyalty of her people long before she became a legend. In 1259, King Reginald passed away. With his last breath, advised Meve to trust no one but Reynard Odo. If you only played the main Witcher games, you probably never heard of Reynard. Although he appears only briefly in the books, he plays a major role in Thronebreaker. Reynard was one of the kingdom's most loyal knights. After Reginald's death, the same unwavering loyalty was devoted entirely to Meve, and he would willingly lay down his life for his queen. He was also a very serious character, caring about traditions and etiquettes. In general, he wasn't a guy who took it easy, but he was someone Meve could always rely on. After the demise of the king, none of his sons were ready to be the next ruler, so Queen Meve was appointed as interim regent in both Rivia and Lyria, meaning she just temporarily filled the position until her sons were ready. Nobles accepted this, thinking that now the king is gone, they could control and manipulate Meve, having her as a puppet ruler to get what they wanted. They were wrong. The moment Meve took power, she put on her armor and crushed all those who opposed her. The commanders of the Lyrian-Rivian army were initially skeptical of her, to the point of ignoring orders. After beheading a few, the rest submitted. The message was unmistakable. From that point on, no one questioned her authority again, and before long, victory after victory silenced even her harshest critics. Meve herself describes this best in the Blood of Elves book.
Something always hung in the air. Everybody was waiting for something, and I showed them. I showed them all what I was capable of, in a way that made the very walls shake and the local grizzly bears wake in their winter lairs, and any silly thoughts disappeared from their heads in a trice. Suddenly, everyone knew who ruled.
For the first few years, Meve's reign was relatively peaceful, but in 1263, everything changed. Nilfgaard invaded Sintra, bringing war to the northern kingdoms. The invasion of Sintra was so brutal that it would forever be remembered as the Massacre of Sintra. For an empire that prides itself on being civilized and cultured, they committed many atrocities. Among the dead was Meve's cousin, Queen Calansi, who chose to take her own life rather than fall into the Nilfgaardian hands. After the fall of Sintra, Nilfgaard pushed further to the north, only to be stopped at the legendary Battle of Sudden Hill. Meve's forces fought there alongside the other northern armies and the Brotherhood of Mages, handing the empire its first great defeat. Recognizing the growing danger, King Foltest and Queen Meve, who were cousins actually, formed a military alliance, promising to come to one another's aid if Nilfgaard invaded again. A few years later, that threat returned. Nilfgaard once again gathered its strengths, and the northern rulers met at Hagge to decide how they would respond. This council, depicted in Blood of Elves, is one of my favorite Meve scenes in the entire series. It's where we stop hearing about her reputation and finally get to see how she thinks as a ruler. Gathered at Hagge were the most powerful rulers of the North: Vesemir of Redania, Foltest of Temeria, Demvend of Aedirn, Henselt of Kedvein, and Queen Meve of Lyria and Rivia. Nilfgaard had already reached the Yaruga River, but had stopped short of crossing it. The Yaruga wasn't just another river. It was the natural border separating the empire from the northern kingdoms. If Nilfgaard crossed it, war would become inevitable. Vesemir started the meeting by saying that they should do something about it, that Nilfgaard will attack, and the Norse must be ready. Henselt wasn't convinced. After the crushing defeat at Sudden and the execution of Nilfgaardian commanders, he believed that the empire would never risk it again. The kings argued back and forth. Demavend occasionally joined the discussion, Foltest remaining suspiciously silent, while Meve simply listened. She waited until everyone else had spoken, before finally breaking her silence.
Let us say that they do not cross the Yaruga. Let us say that Nilfgaard will simply wait. Now let us consider, who would that suit, them or us? Who can let themselves wait and do nothing, and who can't?
Meve understands the threat, and the way she puts her argument isn't direct, isn't confrontational. Instead, she asks a simple question that forces everyone in the room to arrive at the answer on their own. Vesemir, obviously happy with her answer, replies, Meve, as usual, does not say much, but she hits the nail on the head. The discussion soon shifts away from Nilfgaard armies to another growing threat, the Scoia'tael. Henselt argues that the Scoia'tael have become a major problem, disrupting the trade, terrorizing villages, and making normal life impossible. Foltest agrees, declaring that if the elves want war, they'll get it, and vows to crush the Scoia'tael in his kingdom. Demavend, however, believes they're looking at the wrong problem. Scoia'tael are merely one piece of Nilfgaard's strategy. Without crossing the Yaruga, the Empire is already weakening the northern kingdoms through propaganda, trade, and promise of better life under imperial rule. The discussion gets heated. Then something rather amusing happens. The room suddenly falls silent, and every king turns to look at Meve. Confused, she simply asks, "Why is everyone looking at me?" Henselt grins. "We're admiring your beauty." Even in the middle of discussing a war that could determine the fate of the North, the kings still find time to tease one another. Vesemir joins in. "Meve, we all know you could find a solution to everything. You have a woman's intuition. You're wise." Meve immediately cuts him off, saying, "Stop flattering me." It shows the position of Meve among northern rulers, how every other ruler looks up to her because of her wisdom and decisiveness. Foltest and Vesemir are brilliant rulers in their own right. Demavend is thoughtful and Henselt is decisive. But Meve's greatest strength is that she doesn't play political games. She's direct, practical, and speaks only when she has something worth saying. That's why whenever she finally does speak, everyone listens, and once again, she's the one who unites the room.
Nilfgaard is watching and waiting. Nilfgaard is observing us. Something is hanging in the air. Silly thoughts are springing up in many heads. So let us show them what we are capable of. Let us show them who is really king here. Let us shake the walls of this great castle plunged into a winter torpor.
Meve's speech finally breaks the deadlock. The kings begin discussing concrete plans, with Henselt calling for the destruction of the Scoia'tael. Everyone seems satisfied, except for Foltest. Foltest argues that waiting for Nilfgaard to invade is a mistake. Instead, the North should strike first, cross the Yaruga, and retake Sintra. To Foltest, Sintra isn't just another kingdom. It's a symbol. Just as Canance's death united the North at Sudden, liberating Sintra could unite it once again. Henselt strongly disagrees. If the North invades first, it becomes the aggressor, breaks the peace treaty, and risks losing both its allies and the support of the Brotherhood of Mages. Foltest doesn't back down. Instead, he offers an even bolder solution. If the Norse can't attack first, then make it look like Nilfgaard did. A staged border incident would give them the perfect excuse to invade while claiming they were only defending themselves. You might think this was very brave of Foltest to suggest capturing Sintra. Other kings thought so too, that Foltest wants to capture Sintra just to show a big middle finger to Nilfgaard. But you were deceived just like all other northern kings, as Foltest had ulterior motives, and it was only Meve who, instead of arguing whether they should recapture Sintra, saw through Foltest's plan.
So you are going to send Sintrian guerrillas to their deaths? In the line of attack? Not telling them that Sintra can only be reborn as a vassal country under your protectorship? You are proposing, to all of us, an attack on Sintra for your own gain? You have Seaborn, Sodden, and Bruges for yourself, are sharpening your teeth on Verdun, and now you have caught a whiff of Sintra. Is that right?
The debate quickly moves beyond how to liberate Sintra and onto an even more difficult question: who would rule it once it was free? The discussion continues for quite a while, eventually turning almost entirely towards Ciri, as she is the rightful heir of Sintra. It's one of the best political conversations Sapkowski ever wrote, so I would genuinely recommend reading the chapter yourself. After their meeting, Meve strengthened her borders, getting ready to repel the inevitable attack of Nilfgaard. It wasn't enough. Nilfgaard struck first, capturing the three great border fortresses guarding Lyria and Edirne. The attack was devastatingly effective because the Nilfgaardian troops were disguised as Lyrian and Edirnian soldiers. Worse still, Henselt abandoned the alliance forged at Hagge, and instead reached an agreement with the Emperor Emir, leaving Meve and Demavend to face the invasion alone. Within days, Meve's kingdom was falling apart. Her defenses had collapsed, one of her allies had abandoned her, and Nilfgaard was advancing deeper into her realm. This is where the books become brief. Fortunately, Thronebreaker fills in many of the missing details and shows us how Meve struggled for her kingdom. When Meve is back from the council in the Thronebreaker, we learn that Count Caldwell, together with several ambitious nobles and backed by Nilfgaard, staged a coup to place Meve's eldest son Willem on the throne. The coup succeeds. Meve is imprisoned, soon to be executed, while Willem allows himself to be crowned king under Nilfgaardian protection. I think it's a good time to hear what Meve thought of her sons.
Both were even stupider than their father. May he rest in peace. Whoever knew my deceased husband will understand what I mean.
That's a fact, agreed the King of Redania. I knew him. Are your sons really more stupid? Damn it, I thought it wasn't possible to get any more stupid. Forgive me, Meve.
It's nothing, Vizimir.
Back in prison, Meve's fate seemed sealed. Count Caldwell had ordered her execution at dawn, and it looked as though the White Queen's story would end before it had truly begun. But Meve had earned something far more valuable than the loyalty of nobles. She had earned the loyalty of her people. Refusing to abandon their queen, a group of her most trusted servants stormed the prison and freed her and Reynard Odo before the execution could take place. As soon as Meve was freed, she gathered every loyal soldier she could find and marched to Aldersberg, where King Demavend was assembling his remaining forces. Together, they made one desperate stand against the invading empire. It was a hopeless battle. Meve and Demavend commanded barely 5,000 to 6,000 soldiers, while Nilfgaard had an army several times larger. With the battle lost, Meve and Demavend escaped the burning Aldersberg through a secret passage. After the defeat, Demavend chose to retreat north and preserve what remained of his kingdom. Meve made a different choice. She refused to abandon Lyria and Rivia, declaring that she would stay behind and fight to reclaim her homeland. Before parting ways, Demavend entrusted Meve with one final gift: the Leaden Ring. This rare token granted its bearer a safe passage into Mahakam, the dwarven stronghold, and permission to remain there under the protection of its elder-in-chief. Very few outsiders were entrusted with one. With no kingdom left and a few allies remaining, Meve set out for Mahakam, hoping to convince its ruler to send a volunteer corps of dwarves to join her impossible war. Before we continue, I want to take a moment to ask, if you are enjoying this deep dive into Queen Meve's story, consider leaving a like and subscribing. It helps support these longer character lore videos and lets me know you want to see more. With that said, let's return to the story of the White Queen. As Meve marched through Edirne into Mahakam Pass, she was welcomed by the dwarf Gabber Zigrin, Meve's goal is simple: convince Mahakam's ruler, Elder-in-Chief Hugh, to support her war, but Hugh refuses without hesitation. After centuries of watching humans drag one another into endless wars, he has no intention of letting Mahakam become involved in yet another one. Refusing to give up, Meve listens to Gaber's advice. If she can't convince Hugh directly, perhaps she can earn the respect of Mahakam's clans first. She does exactly that, clearing monsters across the region, protecting dwarven settlements, and solving problems the clans couldn't handle themselves. After winning over nearly every clan, Meve expects Hugh to finally agree to help. Confident she has finally proven herself, Meve returns to Hugh, only to find him furious. He reveals that there was a deeper reason he hadn't dealt with some of those monsters himself. They were connected to the mysterious destruction of an entire dwarven clan. Now, rather than offering his support, Hugh summons Meve to Mount Carbon for questioning. On the way to the Mount Carbon, Meve's company is ambushed by Squeatal, a reminder that Nilfgaard's influence has reached even Mahakam. After the attack, Meve finally meets with Elder Hugh once again. This time, Hugh changes his mind. Seeing the Empire exploit the Squeatal for his own goals, he decides that Mahakam can no longer remain neutral. While he has no intention of fully committing his people to humanity's wars, he agrees to support Meve in a way that also serves Mahakam's interests. Meve and the dwarves feast, drink, and celebrate. When the feast is over, Hugh makes good on his promise. A regiment of Mahakam's dwarf volunteers join Meve's army, giving her one of the strongest and most loyal forces she will command for the rest of her campaign. With Mahakam's dwarves now fighting alongside her, Meve marches south to Angren. Her army has grown stronger, and so has its confidence. Instead of staying on the defensive, her forces begin crossing the Yaruga to raid Nilfgaardian positions, constantly harassing the Empire whenever the opportunity arises. Angren is the perfect battlefield for this kind of war. As one of Nilfgaard's key supply regions, it keeps the Imperial armies fed, but its dense forests and treacherous swamps also make it ideal for guerrilla tactics, allowing Meve to strike quickly, disappear into wilderness, and slowly bleed the Empire's resources. But Meve's campaign in Angren isn't just about weakening Nilfgaard. It's also a personal one. The region is home to Count Caldwell, the traitor who sided with the Empire and was rewarded with the title of Palatine. When Meve finally tracks him down, she defeats and kills him at the Battle of Tulsa Castle, settling an old score. But there is no time to celebrate. As Meve reaches Redport, she discovers Nilfgaard has prepared a trap. A Nilfgaardian commander had gathered an Imperial force and blocked the only bridge leading out of Angren, determined to end the Queen's raid once and for all. Trapped with no other escape, Meve has only one option. She must force her way across the bridge, or lose everything she has fought for. What follows is one of the most epic battles in the entire Witcher saga. The battle for the bridge. If you were thinking what happens if Geralt meets Queen Meve, well, you got your wish. Battle for the Bridge is an epic story where Geralt of Rivia and Queen of Rivia Meve fight on the same side, killing Nilfgaardians. Meve's campaign had been remarkably successful. Her constant raids had crippled Nilfgaardian supply lines and forced the Empire to divert troops to hunt her down. Their only hope was the bridge at Redport. If they could cross it, Meve could disappear into the north and continue her guerrilla war. If they failed, her rebellion would end right there. Everything she had accomplished over the previous months depended on reaching the opposite bank. On the other hand, Geralt and his company were on a journey to find Ciri, and they needed to cross Yaruga. By chance, the current took them straight to the bridge rather than the shore. which made him walk straight into one of the bloodiest battles of the war. Meve's soldiers fought desperately on the southern bank of the Yaruga, slowly retreating towards the bridge, while trying to keep the Nilfgaardians at bay. Fighting alongside her own soldiers in the front ranks, Meve received a terrible wound across her face, yet refused to leave the battlefield. Her determination kept the army together, even as it was pushed closer and closer to disaster. The Nilfgaardians, however, reached the bridge first. The small Lyrian forces left behind to defend the crossing stood little chance against the Empire's advances. They fell upon the small Lyrian detachment tasked with defending the crossing, breaking its ranks and driving the survivors into a desperate retreat. With the bridge all but lost, Queen Meve's army stood on the brink of disaster. With the defenders scattering and Nilfgaard pressing its advantage, Geralt did what he had spent so long claiming he would never do. He stepped into someone else's war. Alongside Cahir, ironically an ex-Nilfgaardian officer, Geralt rallied the fleeing Lyrian soldiers. Men who had been running for their lives suddenly turned around, drew their weapons, and charged back towards the bridge. With Geralt and Cahir leading the attack, the desperate retreat became one final stand against the Empire.
And so it happened that the Witcher and the Nilfgaardian shouted, wildly waved their swords, and rushed forward without hesitation, the two comrades, two friends and companions, to meet a common enemy in an unequaled battle. This was their baptism of fire, a baptism of a common struggle, rage, madness, and death. They went to their death, they, the two companions. Or so they thought. They could not possibly know that they would not die that day on this particular bridge, slung over the Yaruga River. They did not know that it was intended for them a different death, in another place and at another time.
It was a brutal battle, fought one bloody step at a time. Geralt and the rallied Lyrian soldiers pushed forward across the bridge, slowly forcing the Nilfgaardians back. Inch by inch, they reclaimed the crossing until the northern end of the bridge was finally back in Lyrian hands. That was all Queen Meve needed. While Geralt and the Lyrians held the bridge, the rest of her army crossed the Yaruga to safety. The Nilfgaardians prepared to launch another attack, but when they saw the main Lyrian host forming up on the other side, they chose not to risk it and withdrew instead. Once every last Lyrian soldier had crossed, the bridge was torn down behind them, putting the Yaruga between Meve's battered army and the Nilfgaardians, who had come so close to destroying it. Against all odds, the White Queen had survived once again. Her resistance lived on, and much of that was thanks to Geralt and the men who had chosen to stand beside him. After the fighting finally ended, Queen Meve personally came to Geralt. She knew that without his intervention, her army might never have escaped the southern bank of the Yaruga. Touched by Geralt's bravery, Queen Meve knighted him, which is a funny interaction, as Meve, because of the deep wound across her face that had knocked out several of her teeth, couldn't speak coherently. Rather than trying to describe the scene myself, I'm going to read the passage directly from Baptism of Fire, because I don't think I could do it justice. After that, we'll continue with the final chapter of Meve's story.
Geralt raised his head. The woman who stood before him in armour had very fair hair, almost as white as his own. He realized that the hair was not white, but grey. But the woman's face showed no signs of aging. Maturity, yes, but not old age. "Stand up, sir," one of the knights standing next to Geralt whispered. "Offer up tribute. This is the Queen." The Witcher stood up. He bowed, overcoming the pain in his loins. "Queen Meve," the man in the purple cloak said emphatically. Stood in the first line, brave as a knight, and stood against the overwhelming forces of Nilfgaard. The wound hurts, but it will not disfigure. You saved her and the whole army. After some traitors kidnapped the ferry, the bridge was our only hope, and you heroically defended. The knight in purple bowed, and then looked at Geralt. What is your name? Who cares, he thought. I'm sick of all this. I will not lie. Geralt. Geralt from where? Nowhere.
No fame, are we?
Meve redecorated the sand under her feet with splashes of saliva mixed with blood. What? No. No family, your Royal Highness. Meve drew her sword.
Neil.
He obeyed, still unable to believe what was happening.
Eu puis formula. I cannot speak.
For unprecedented valour in battle for a just cause, Purple recited emphatically, as proof of your virtue, honour, and fidelity to the crown, I, Meve, by the grace of the gods, Queen of Lyria and Rivia, by my power, right and privilege knight thee. Serve faithfully. Accept this accolade, one that will not hurt. Geralt felt a blow on the shoulder blade. He looked into the pale green eyes of the queen. Meve spit, thick and red, pressed a handkerchief to her face and winked at him from over the lace.
Geralt was knighted, but he wasn't there to serve Queen Meve. He had to find Ciri, so he asked the queen to exempt him from the army with royal blessing for his private quest. Meve refused calmly but firmly. She reminded Geralt that a knight's oath was not something to be cast aside the moment it became inconvenient. Basically, Meve had found a super soldier who could change the course of battles, so she wasn't about to let him go easily. Geralt and his companions left anyway, quietly slipping out of the camp under the cover of night, stealing some provisions and horses in the process. Unsurprisingly, Meve was absolutely furious. But while Geralt continued his search for Ciri, Meve continued her war, and the victory at the bridge changed the course of the war. Her guerrilla campaigns inspired resistance across the occupied north, forcing Nilfgaard to pull troops away from Lyria and Rivia to deal with the growing rebellions. Meve seized that opportunity without hesitation and marched home to liberate Lyria and Rivia. Town after town fell back under her control, until at last she had reached the city of Rivia itself. After a hard-fought siege, the Nilfgaardian commander, Ardel Abdahi, had no choice but to abandon the city and retreat. Meve prepared to pursue the fleeing general, but then an imperial messenger was captured, carrying orders from Emperor Emir himself. The message commanded Ardal to take his own life for failing the campaign. Amused, Meve lets the message go through. Soon afterward, Meve united her army with those of King Demvend and Henselt. Despite being heavily outnumbered, the northern rulers won a decisive victory that shattered Nilfgaard's grip on the region. The Second Northern War was over, and Nilfgaard had been defeated once again. But perhaps no ruler had earned that victory more than Queen Meve. She had lost everything, her kingdom, her army, even her own freedom, and won it all back through courage, determination, and relentless perseverance. That, however, is where Meve's story ends in the books. The Third Northern War belongs to the games, beginning in The Witcher 2 and continuing throughout The Witcher 3. So, what happens to Queen Meve in the Third Northern War? Well, the Third Northern War starts before Nilfgaard directly attacks. Learning from the two previous defeats, this time they plan to kill the northern rulers first, in order to create chaos and attack after that to have an easy victory. For that, they hire a witcher from the School of Viper called Letho. Letho successfully kills Demvend and Foltest. But there is no attempt on Queen Meve's life, and it wasn't explained why. This invasion proved far more successful than the previous two. Nilfgaard conquered lands it had never managed to take before, including Temeria itself. On the world map, Lyria and Rivia eventually appear under Nilfgaardian control. Did Queen Meve surrender, or is she still out there fighting Nilfgaard? We simply don't know, and it was not covered in The Witcher 3. No mention of her role in the Third War at all. There is, however, one thing we do know. By the end of Blood and Wine, Queen Meve is still alive. During the tournament in Tucson, we meet her younger son, and if we search his tent, we find a letter sent by his mother, Queen Meve. It reads,
Dear son, judging by your prolonged absence from the palace, I must conclude you have yet again rode off to join the Knights' tourney in Tucson, despite my asking you not to do so. Twice in a row, you begged coin from me for the journey, boasting with confidence you would win the tourney if you could but have a new horse, armor, and sword. Twice in a row, I gave in to your pleading. This year, I forbade you from going, yet I see I merely rule my realm, not my own son. Enjoy yourself, but know that your monthly allowance ends today. No matter your place on the podium, I am sending a messenger with this letter to Beauclair and trust he will find you there. Your loving mother, Meve.
The letter confirms two things. First, Meve survived the Third Northern War. Second, she appears to be living in her palace once again. Whether that means she reached some agreement with Nilfgaard or somehow reclaimed her kingdom is impossible to say. CDPR never gave us the answer. Personally, I'm just glad she survived, and hopefully, one day, we'll get to see the White Queen again in the future Witcher games. Queen Meve was a ruler who valued strength, honesty, and practicality. By the August 1267, when she was nearing 40, Meve's hair turned grayish-white, although it appeared blonde from a distance. Combined with the white coat of her horse, they earned her the moniker of White Queen. Unlike many rulers, Meve never let praise or flattery cloud her judgment. Whether she was speaking with kings, nobles, or commoners, she judged people by their actions rather than their words. Unlike many of other kings at the Council of Hagge, she opposed extreme measures such as killing children, in this case Ciri to be exact, believing there were lines that they should never cross, even at war. Though not particularly religious, she would quietly pray to Melitele whenever fear and uncertainty threatened to overwhelm her. During the Second Nilfgaardian War, Meve became known for her courage and determination, refusing to surrender after losing her kingdom. She built a resistant force and earned the legendary title Sun Slayer from the bard Dandelion. On top of that, Meve often held those of more sensitive constitution in disfavor, and her strict and hardened personality made her relationship with her sons difficult, especially with Willem. Still, beneath her stern exterior, she cared deeply for both of them. And with that, the story of Queen Meve comes to an end. If you enjoyed this longer style of character lore, let me know in the comments which character you'd like me to cover next. As always, thank you for watching, and until the next time, take care.
With General Epdahi dead, the Nilfgaardian army descended into chaos. The kings of the north, united, took advantage and struck at the foe. Their victory was complete. The Nordling forces cheered their commanders and monarchs, but for none so vehemently as the one queen among them. Many dream of achieving the impossible. Meve had done it. Through wit, determination, and boldness, she had thwarted the Nilfgaardian invasion. The queen would rule for many more years, stern, yet ever just.
Ha! So a lass saved the North from the Blackclads.
That is one way to put it.
Well, I'll be damned. And a chap. She find herself one in the end?
Leave it be. Bloke's been spinning the tale all night. Story's done. Time we got some shut-eye.
Yes. Particularly as we've yet a long road before us.